that, though, it's thought that more than 1 million adults in the UK are living with bipolar disorder. That's about 30% more than the number of people living with dementia.
And yet it remains widely misunderstood and often goes undiagnosed.
Well, Chef Heston Blumenthal has spent his entire life unaware that he has bipolar. That was until his symptoms spiralled out of control. In
honour of Bipolar Awareness Month, Heston joins us now to share his story. Good morning to you.
Good morning, guys.
Thank
Lovely
you.
to see you,
Yeah,
Heston.
it is lovely
likewise.
to see you. And you really want to take the stigma away from this and really draw awareness to it as well, because you weren't diagnosed. You spent most of your life just thinking you had ADHD.
Yeah, it was about 13, 14 months ago when I ended up being sectioned. And then I got the diagnosis. I had no idea. I mean, I was diagnosed with ADHD in 2017.
Mm-hmm. OK.
So there's quite a big crossover between ADHD and bipolar.
Similar symptoms.
Similar symptoms, yes. And so I really didn't think about it until you have these sort of manic highs and then drop into these lows. And when you're on the manic highs, you think you get this sense of, I don't know, grandiosity. You think I'm Superman, I want to save the world and everything's beautiful and ideas just pouring out. And then something happens and it's a bit like an overactive child that's really having a great time, and then someone moves something and then they have a mini tantrum. Yeah. And then you can go into this sort of, let's say, darker moments. And I think that I was so consumed when on the manic highs. Yeah. I didn't really think about it that much. And someone asked me now. It was the best thing that could happen, being sectioned. My wife had me sectioned.
It was very brave of her, though.
And I imagine awful for all of you at the same time.
Yeah, she didn't know if I'd blame her so much that there was resentment built up, but it saved my life. The best thing that could have happened to me. So I spent 2 months in there, then off on medications that are continually being tweaked. And I can look back and think, blimey, with those highs and those lows, now I'm definitely in the process of stabilising.
Yeah.
Your career, which we all know, we've been lucky enough to work with you and eat with you in the past, Heston.
Best in the world.
And, of course, there was so much involved in that I imagine that when you look back, some of the symptoms of your ADHD and even the bipolar were probably focused or suppressed because of the hours and the commitment and the effort and the focus that you put into your cooking.
I wasn't sure if how much of it was related even to ADHD. I mean, I was so exhausted at one point, this is years ago. I was caramelising a lemon tart. So you get the blowtorch, turn the gas on, press the button and light the blowtorch, and then caramelise it with the sugar. So I turned the gas on, I walked to the hot tap, and I remember thinking, I can't possibly light a blowtorch with cold water. It was like something out of Alice in Wonderland. Wow. But I was that tired, it was sort of delirious. But I don't know if that's because the drive of the cooking, being immersed in that and that imagination and creativity.
Yeah. Because you were working 120 hours a week.
Yeah. And sleeping 20.
20, yes. I don't know how I did it. Yeah. And, you know, there's a lot of talk about what happens to your imagination and creativity. I can say now, so after the period of coming out of hospital, I was a bit zombified with the medication.
Because they have to get the balance, right?
To get the balance. There's bit by bit, then returning to you still have highs and lows, but they're nothing like they are before. And the imagination is still there, which is fantastic. I'm back at the duck now.
Are you?
Yeah.
So you're back creating, you're back part of the team, you're back coming up with ideas?
Yes.
Which must be really, really a relief and satisfaction.
Oh, yeah. Completely.
I've seen interviews with you as well, because you have been very, very open about this. You really kind of want to get the word out there, because the moment you have a diagnosis, I think you can start to deal with things in a very practical way. It's
so important. A lot of people don't know. And if you think about, you said there's 1.2 million people with bipolar, but you know, there could easily be double or more than that haven't been diagnosed. But we've got to remember the people the loved ones. If someone's got the diagnosis or not, but they're bipolar, they're close friends that care about them. It can be really damaging for them.
Yeah.
How do you, I mean, Heston, what happened that meant that suddenly things started unravelling and these manic episodes became more prevalent? Had you stepped away from as much cooking, so you had a bit more time on your hands?
Yes, that's one really good point. I started also in the darker moments. There was sort of suicidal thoughts, and I realised after it's quite a classic symptom of being in a mania stage where you can hallucinate sound and smell and touch, and I saw a gun on the table. And I told my wife, which obviously was, for me, it all seemed quite normal. I look back at it, there was nothing normal about it. However, I remember seeing an interview that Stephen Fry did. And he said, he asked 30 to 40 people, if there was a button that you could press that would turn off your ADHD, turn off your bipolar, would you press it? Yeah. And only one person said, yes, I'd press it.
Really? So all those people with bipolar said that they wouldn't? Yeah,
there are lots of positives. It's just not fair on eventually you're going to do some damage to yourself and it's going to affect the people you love.
And I think it's your wife's father that's a therapist?
He was involved in mental health.
Yeah, so they could see what was happening, and it was your wife that sectioned you. But was it then that the conversation started talking about, look, Heston really needs help? There could be a scenario where he has something like bipolar.
Yes, and I didn't believe them. Not? I thought it was all nonsense. So I got my diagnosis within the first week of being in hospital, and because I was in there for 2 months, I was being monitored. And I was just surprised when I had it.
Dr. Nigat's here as well. Yeah. And Dr. Nigat, hearing Heston talk, and he's so open and honest about it, which shows an awful lot of courage, but the importance of sharing. What is interesting is getting that diagnosis of bipolar, how important it was to him, but also how difficult it is for people to get the diagnosis. Why is that?
And it's an ongoing problem at the moment. In last year, in 2023, the NICE guidelines were updated, but actually what we don't have still yet is a national register or a quality outcome framework, or QOF, that GPs then can follow up patients and look at the assessment, and then referral systems and the outcomes of that. It takes 9.5 years for a patient to get diagnosed with bipolar. And so when we don't have a meaningful way of getting those assessments done, patients can be within the system waiting for that diagnosis, and we pick them up at crisis, as we did with Heston. And the other reason why it's so difficult to diagnose is because there's actually 3 different types of bipolar disorders, and you get type 1, where you can have depression, you can have hypermania or mania. Type 2, which you can get long periods of depression and long periods of hypermania. And actually, it depends where we pick you up on that phase, because it could be just diagnosed as a depressive disorder on our letters. And then the other thing, it could be cyclothymia, which means you can get long periods of depression or just be in hypomania, and that can last up to 2 years at a time. So essentially, the diagnosis of bipolar is made by looking through the notes, as they did with Heston, once they followed up his pattern of behaviour. And it's a histrionic, it's looking back over his life and going, oh, actually, we need to consider this as a diagnosis.
So, Nigat, if those symptoms are resonating with anybody, what should they do? What should the next steps be?
The first thing is that I would say keep a symptom diary, have a look in your family if there is other family members that could have the condition. Your family will also give you a really good collateral history as well. There is a screening tool which is backed up by the NHS and also the Bipolar UK charity as well, which actually I'm just going to very quickly check the name of, which is a mood disorder questionnaire. Now, I don't say that people should self-diagnose. That's always really difficult, because once you start putting labels on yourself, it can be really hard. It can be stagnating in how we can actually look at a diagnosis. But that mood questionnaire could actually give you some insight into where you are and how your symptoms are affecting your lifestyle, your work, your relationships. And then also, I always say this to my patients, so you have something in your pocket on a daily basis, which is your mobile phone. So I know it's really awkward and it can be difficult, but record those moments of hypomania or those moments of severe low mood, because when you come and see us, we have now what's known as a single point of access in the NHS. We have what's known as the accurate system. So you can send me your video or send me your photograph as your GP, and we can attach that to the referral, because the referral system to secondary care, like our psychiatry colleagues, is all based on who needs the most immediate help and etc. So that can be really helpful.
Thanks, Nick.
Really important that they reach out as well, Heston. You'd agree with that. If you think if there's family members that are concerned about the behaviour of somebody, because as you said, you completely flatly denied that it was happening. You couldn't see what they were talking about.
It's so important. It takes on average, 9.5 years to get a diagnosis. When you bear in mind that the levels of suicide, well, especially when you cross over with ADHD, they go up, I don't know, tenfold or something like that. So 9 years is an awful long time for people to suffer suicidal thoughts and depression. It's a very sort of tricky disease.
And it's also not something to be frightened of, too.
Sorry, I just said disease. It's not a disease. Yeah. it's a condition. And don't be frightened of it.
No, because actually it's one of the things that absolutely makes you who you are.
Yes.
And the level of creativity and passion that you have about making
magic,
what you do.
the skill.
The Willy Wonka.
Yeah. Yes.
As Roald Dahl's wife said.
Yes.
Heston cooked for on the Channel 4. You did a Channel 4 show, and I was lucky enough to go. And we were talking about Roald Dahl's wife, and sat down with you and said, "I wish my husband had met the real life."
Had been alive.
Yes.
And that night, you created this edible wallpaper.
Yeah, we stuck it on with apple pectin.
That's right.
And then flocked the wallpaper. There was a sausage.
Yes, there was sausage flavour. Some fruit.
Cheese and pineapple.
Cheese and pineapple.
And then you had these. The flocking was in the shape of the food.
So the pattern, and we were all there licking the walls, just thinking this is. It was one of the most wonderful meals I have ever eaten and I will ever eat, Heston.
Oh, thank you so much.
And it's lovely to hear you're back in the kitchen.
Yeah.
You feel like that creativity's there.
Yes.
You're still very busy and enjoying that part of your life.
Yeah, thankfully.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we're thankful too.
Thank you for coming this morning.
A pleasure, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, look, if you would like to know more about bipolar disorder, then the information and the helpline are all available on
Thank you for visiting our This Morning YouTube channel. We upload new content every day, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out, and we'll see you in the morning.